It all started when Ellen DeGeneres, once known as the queen of daytime television and beloved for her lighthearted humor, found herself entangled in a controversy that seemed to shake her carefully built public image. For years, Ellen's on-screen persona had been built on kindness, laughter, and positivity. Her catchphrase, "Be kind to one another," became a sort of pop culture mantra that millions admired. But as time went on, cracks began to appear behind that shiny image. Rumors began circulating that the cheerful talk show host was not as warm and gentle behind the scenes as she appeared to be on camera. Among the many people who were asked about Ellen's true nature, one name stood out: Judge Judy. Known for her sharp wit and no-nonsense attitude, Judge Judy had spent decades ruling daytime television in her own right. She had a reputation for being direct, firm, and even intimidating, but she was also respected for her honesty. So when Ellen jokingly commented that Judge Judy was mean, it set the stage for a public exchange that no one quite expected. The remark didn't sound harsh at first. Ellen had made it during a lighthearted segment, laughing as she described how Judge Judy's stern courtroom persona scared her a little. On the surface, it seemed harmless. Ellen was known for her playful teasing, after all. But in an era where the public was already starting to question Ellen's own treatment of staff and guests, the comment didn't land as well as she might have hoped. Viewers began to notice an irony in Ellen calling someone else mean, especially someone like Judge Judy, who was unapologetically authentic about who she was. Judge Judy, never one to shy away from addressing a situation directly, responded with her trademark candor. She didn't lash out, nor did she deliver a scathing retort. Instead, she made a calm but cutting observation that turned the spotlight right back on Ellen. Judy reportedly said that while Ellen might have thought she was being funny, perhaps she should pay a bit more attention to what her own employees had been saying. Those few words hit like a thunderclap in Hollywood. They were subtle, but the message was clear. Before calling others mean, Ellen might need to take a closer look at her own workplace environment. Around that time, reports from behind the scenes of the Ellen DeGeneres show began surfacing, painting a very different picture from the bubbly on-screen vibe. Former employees described an atmosphere of fear, strict control, and emotional discomfort. Some said they were afraid to speak up about mistreatment or even make eye contact with Ellen when she walked by. Others alleged that producers and senior staff fostered a toxic environment that went unchecked for years. The disconnect between Ellen's public image and her private behavior became the central theme of the controversy. Judge Judy's quiet response resonated deeply with the public because it seemed to capture what many were already thinking. Ellen, who had long been perceived as Hollywood's nicest talk show host, was now being accused of the very behavior she had jokingly attributed to someone else. The contrast was almost cinematic. Judge Judy, the woman who embraced her toughness and never pretended to be soft, was being called mean by someone who was allegedly hiding her own unkindness behind a smile. What made the moment even more striking was how different the two women's careers had been shaped by their personalities. Judge Judy built her success on blunt honesty. She didn't try to charm her audience, she commanded respect by being herself. Ellen, on the other hand, had spent decades cultivating an image of warmth and kindness. Her humor, her generosity, and her charm were her trademarks. But when that image started to crack, it revealed a side of celebrity culture that many fans weren't ready to see. When the staff complaints against Ellen became public, the internet erupted. Social media users began posting clips from her show, analyzing old interviews, and sharing behind-the-scenes accounts from former employees. What had once been considered harmless jokes, moments where Ellen playfully embarrassed her guests or teased people for laughs, were suddenly being re-examined through a much darker lens. People began asking if Ellen's humor had crossed the line from friendly banter into something cruel. Through all this, Judge Judy's remarks started circulating again. It seemed prophetic in hindsight, almost as if she had seen through the facade long before the rest of the world did. Judy had spent her entire career reading people, dissecting their stories, and identifying truth from performance. In her courtroom, there was no room for pretenses. So it wasn't surprising that she could recognize when someone's public persona didn't quite align with who they really were. Ellen's situation grew increasingly complicated as more voices joined the conversation. Some defended her, saying that every workplace has its issues and that she couldn't be responsible for every single staff problem. Others argued that as the face of the show, Ellen bore ultimate responsibility for the culture behind it. A few of her celebrity friends came to her defense, describing her as kind, generous, and supportive. But others, both famous and not, began to share stories that hinted at a pattern of dismissiveness or insensitivity. Judge Judy never made a big spectacle out of the situation. She didn't go on talk shows or post dramatic statements on social media. Her one comment was enough. It carried weight precisely because of how measured it was. People respected her for her integrity and consistency. She didn't need to perform kindness to prove she had it. She was respected because she was real. The tension between Ellen's brand of kindness and Judge Judy's brand of honesty highlighted something deeper about how the entertainment industry shapes public perception. Audiences love to believe in good-natured heroes, especially those who make them laugh. But fame often requires maintaining a carefully managed image, and that image doesn't always reflect reality. For Ellen, who had built her entire career on the idea of positivity and empathy, the revelation that she may have allowed a toxic work culture to flourish was devastating. Meanwhile, Judge Judy's authenticity stood in sharp contrast. She had never pretended to be warm or nurturing. She didn't smile for approval or soften her tone to seem likable. Yet, paradoxically, people trusted her more. She wasn't nice in the conventional sense, but she was genuine, and in a world where so much is performative, that kind of authenticity feels rare and refreshing. When you look back at Ellen's comment now, it feels almost symbolic, as if she projected her own insecurities onto someone who had no need to hide behind charm. Calling Judge Judy mean may have seemed like harmless humor at the time, but in retrospect, it exposed something deeper about Ellen's own discomfort with criticism and confrontation. The fallout from the Ellen scandal would go on to change daytime television in ways few expected. Sponsors withdrew, ratings dropped, and eventually, Ellen announced that her show would be coming to an end. She cited burnout and the desire for new challenges, but many suspected the real reason was the damage done to her reputation. Even though she tried to apologize and take accountability, the public had already shifted its perception of her. The kindness queen image was gone, replaced by skepticism. Judge Judy, on the other hand, continued her career largely unbothered by the drama. Her show remained strong, her fan base loyal, and her reputation intact. In fact, some even praised her more after the Ellen controversy, noting how rare it was to see a celebrity who didn't hide behind a facade. Judy's simple reminder that people should treat others with respect behind the scenes, not just when the cameras are rolling, seemed to carry more truth than any lengthy apology could. In a strange way, the entire exchange became a case study in authenticity versus performance. One woman had built her empire on being tough but fair, while the other had built hers on being kind but allegedly insincere. And when the masks fell, the truth was clear. People will always value honesty, even if it comes with a bit of sharpness, over fake kindness that hides unkind behavior. For Ellen, the lesson was harsh but necessary. The world she had entertained for so long was changing. Viewers were no longer satisfied with polished images and rehearsed smiles. They wanted sincerity, something Judge Judy had in abundance. And so, that one offhand comment about Judy being mean became something much bigger. It became a reflection of how the public had begun to see Ellen herself, someone who, beneath all the smiles, may have been struggling to live up to the very message she had built her empire on. As the controversy surrounding Ellen DeGeneres continued to unfold, the entertainment world found itself in the middle of a cultural reckoning. The public was beginning to question long-held assumptions about fame, kindness, and how television personalities behaved when the cameras stopped rolling. For years, the world had adored Ellen as a symbol of lighthearted humor and inclusivity. Her show had provided comfort to millions of viewers, especially during difficult times. Yet behind that comforting presence, the whispers of discontent from her staff told a different story, one of fear, favoritism, and exhaustion. When Judge Judy's quiet but piercing response resurfaced, it struck a nerve. She didn't need to shout or issue a statement filled with emotion. Her reputation for straightforward truth-telling did all the work for her. Many fans felt her comments summed up the irony of the entire situation better than anyone else could. The woman Ellen had once labeled as mean was the one who seemed to have understood the real meaning of respect, not the performative kind that existed only in front of cameras, but the genuine kind that came from treating people fairly no matter their status. As months passed, more employees began to speak publicly about their experiences working on the Ellen DeGeneres show. Some described long hours under intense pressure, while others spoke of moments when Ellen herself seemed distant or dismissive. What shocked audiences most wasn't the idea that a celebrity could have a demanding workplace, it was how drastically that reality clashed with the cheerful, loving image Ellen had spent decades promoting. Her motto of "be kind to one another" suddenly felt hollow when weighed against the testimonies of those who said they had been ignored or mistreated. Ellen eventually addressed the issue directly on her show, delivering a public apology to both her staff and viewers. She acknowledged that problems had occurred and accepted responsibility for not being more aware of what was happening behind the scenes. She expressed regret, assuring everyone that changes were being made. For a brief moment, some fans believed she might be able to recover. But the damage had already been done. Her apology, while sincere in tone, couldn't erase years of stories that contradicted the kindness she preached. Meanwhile, Judge Judy continued to go about her work without missing a beat. She didn't capitalize on the situation, nor did she gloat. To her, this wasn't about being right, it was about being real. Her entire career had been built on an unshakable foundation of honesty and accountability. She wasn't afraid to call people out when they were wrong, but she also didn't take pleasure in seeing others fall. Her comment about Ellen wasn't a jab, it was a reminder of something far deeper, that true integrity shows in how you treat people when no one is watching. As time went on, the conversation shifted from Ellen herself to the larger culture that had enabled such behavior to go unchecked. Many in the entertainment industry began to question whether the pressure to maintain a perfect image had created environments where honesty and empathy were sacrificed. People were beginning to realize that positivity without authenticity was meaningless. The very thing that had made Ellen famous, her contagious optimism, had turned into a kind of mask, hiding the messy truth underneath. Judge Judy, in contrast, had built a career on never hiding her flaws. Her sharp tone, her blunt honesty, and even her impatience were all part of what made her beloved. She never pretended to be gentle or overly compassionate. She didn't need to. What viewers appreciated was her fairness, her ability to see through deception and call out hypocrisy without apology. In many ways, her response to Ellen's remarks symbolized the shift audiences were experiencing. People no longer wanted perfection, they wanted truth. After the scandal, Ellen began to withdraw from the public eye. Though she continued her show for a while longer, the energy was different. There was a noticeable discomfort in the way she interacted with guests. The laughter was there, but it no longer felt effortless. It was as though every smile had to fight its way through a cloud of doubt. Even her audience, once fiercely loyal, seemed unsure how to react. The magic that had once filled her studio had faded, replaced by an uneasy tension that was impossible to ignore. Judge Judy, on the other hand, remained exactly the same, sharp, composed, and unapologetically herself. When asked about Ellen again in later interviews, she didn't add fuel to the fire. Instead, she emphasized the importance of treating everyone with respect and maintaining professionalism, no matter how successful one becomes. She spoke as someone who understood the price of fame but also the importance of staying grounded. Her consistency in both character and values stood as a quiet rebuke to the artificial charm that Hollywood often demanded. The contrast between the two women became almost symbolic, a representation of two sides of celebrity culture. One side was built on performance, smiles, and carefully managed appearances. The other was grounded in truth, even when that truth was uncomfortable. In the end, it was authenticity that endured. Judge Judy didn't need to defend herself or polish her image because she had never built her career on illusion. She was who she was, and that was enough. For Ellen, the experience was transformative. In later interviews, she spoke about how painful it was to see her reputation crumble and how much the backlash affected her personally. She admitted that she had been blindsided by the intensity of the criticism and had struggled to understand how her good intentions could have gone so wrong. It was a rare glimpse of vulnerability from someone who had spent so long hiding behind humor. Some fans sympathized, believing she was genuinely trying to learn from her mistakes. Others, however, felt it was too little, too late. The entertainment industry learned a lesson from the whole ordeal, one that extended far beyond Ellen or Judge Judy. It reminded everyone that charisma and charm can only go so far. Audiences are perceptive, and they can sense when kindness is genuine or merely a performance. The age of the flawless television host, untouched by controversy, was ending. Viewers now wanted real people, flaws, tempers, and all. Judge Judy's steady presence became an example of how honesty, even when it's tough, builds lasting trust. She had never branded herself as a beacon of kindness, yet she managed to earn deep respect. Ellen, who had built her empire on laughter and positivity, found herself questioning what kindness really meant. It was as though the roles had reversed. The woman once accused of being mean was now admired for her integrity, while the one who preached kindness was struggling to prove she meant it. Looking back, it's easy to see why Judy's response resonated so strongly. She didn't have to raise her voice or engage in public drama. Her message carried more power precisely because it was rooted in experience. She understood human behavior. It was her life's work. Her observation about Ellen's staff complaints wasn't about gossip, it was about accountability. It was a reminder that reputations are built not by words, but by actions. For Ellen, the road to redemption has been slow and uncertain. Though she remains a significant figure in television history, her legacy is now more complicated. The story of her rise and fall serves as both a cautionary tale and a reflection of the times. In an age where authenticity is prized above all else, even the most beloved public figures can lose everything if the truth behind the curtain tells a different story. The irony of Ellen's mean comment lives on as a cultural metaphor, a reminder that those who label others harshly often do so to deflect attention from their own insecurities. Judge Judy didn't need to defend herself, because her strength came from transparency. She wasn't afraid of being called tough, she wore it proudly, knowing that kindness isn't always about smiling, sometimes it's about being honest, fair, and consistent. In the end, the story wasn't about who was mean or who was nice. It was about the difference between image and reality. Ellen represented the illusion that charm could cover truth, while Judge Judy represented the idea that truth needs no disguise. When Ellen's carefully constructed image fell apart, it wasn't because she was inherently cruel, it was because the public finally saw the gap between who she claimed to be and who she really was. And in that moment, Judge Judy's words echoed louder than ever. Her quiet reminder about staff complaints had transformed into a universal truth that real kindness doesn't come from slogans, public gestures, or on-screen smiles. It comes from integrity, humility, and the way one treats others when the spotlight is gone. As the months passed after Ellen's public apology, the industry continued to reflect on what had happened. It wasn't just about a single talk show host anymore, it had become a conversation about authenticity in entertainment, workplace ethics, and the immense pressure of maintaining a perfect image in front of millions of people. Ellen's reputation had taken a hit that even her charm couldn't fully repair. While her show tried to return to normal, something had fundamentally changed. The laughter still echoed through the studio, but it no longer carried the same warmth. The audience was watching, but with a different kind of attention, not admiration, but curiosity mixed with skepticism. Behind the scenes, Ellen's production team underwent major changes. Several key producers were replaced, and new policies were introduced to improve staff relations. Publicly, Ellen tried to emphasize that she had learned from the experience. She made an effort to highlight positive stories and moments of generosity once again, hoping to rebuild trust. But rebuilding an image in Hollywood is never easy, especially when the foundation has already been cracked. Meanwhile, Judge Judy continued to thrive. Her show remained one of the most watched programs in daytime television. Even as she prepared to step away from her long-running Courtroom series to launch a new one, her audience followed her faithfully. People admired her resilience and the way she had managed to maintain her career without scandal or artifice. When asked about her longevity in television, Judy often explained that she had never tried to please everyone, she simply did her job with honesty. That, she believed, was the real secret to success. What made the Ellen and Judy situation so fascinating was how their stories reflected two completely different approaches to fame. Ellen had built her empire on likability. Her success came from being perceived as universally loved and admired. Judge Judy, however, built hers on respect, not necessarily affection, but respect born from credibility. When Ellen's reputation began to falter, people turned to Judy as a kind of moral compass, someone who reminded them that being kind doesn't mean avoiding the truth. Over time, Ellen's show began to lose momentum. Ratings declined, and the energy that once filled her interviews seemed to fade. There was a noticeable distance between her and her guests. Conversations that once flowed naturally now felt cautious, as if everyone in the room was afraid of saying the wrong thing. The charm that had once made Ellen irresistible was now under a microscope. Every joke, every smile, every interaction was analyzed and compared to the person described by her former employees. Ellen announced that the upcoming season would be her last. She thanked her audience for years of love and support and reflected on the joy the show had brought her. But even during her farewell speech, there was an undeniable weight in her voice, a sadness that came from knowing that her exit was not entirely by choice. It wasn't the joyful goodbye she had once envisioned, it was the quiet closing of a chapter that had ended more painfully than anyone expected. When the final episode aired, fans were divided. Some remembered her as a pioneer, a woman who had broken barriers, brought laughter into countless homes, and used her platform to promote kindness and equality. Others saw her as a cautionary example of how easily success can blind even the most well-meaning people. The same phrase that had once defined her, "Be kind to one another," now carried an unspoken question: what does kindness really mean? Judge Judy's perspective on the matter, though rarely elaborated in public, continued to resonate. Her initial response to Ellen's mean comment had never been about pettiness or revenge. It was rooted in something much deeper, an understanding that public image means nothing if private behavior tells a different story. Judy had always been transparent about who she was. She didn't sugarcoat her words or pretend to be soft-spoken. She didn't need to smile to prove her compassion. Her fairness and consistency were her version of kindness, and that authenticity had protected her from the kind of scrutiny Ellen faced. For years, audiences had equated kindness with friendliness, assuming that a smile and a joke were signs of goodness. But the Ellen controversy forced people to look deeper. It showed that true kindness isn't performative. It's not about how you make people feel on camera, it's about how you make them feel when no one is watching. Judge Judy embodied that truth, stern but fair, demanding but just. She treated everyone the same, whether they were a celebrity or a stranger standing before her bench. As Ellen's talk show era ended, she shifted her focus to quieter projects. She explored documentary production, animal welfare work, and other ventures outside the daily spotlight. Occasionally, she would appear in interviews, speaking candidly about the lessons she had learned. She admitted that fame had created a distance between her and reality, that she had allowed her image to become more important than her relationships with the people around her. It was a rare and humbling acknowledgement that the public appreciated, even if it didn't fully restore her reputation. Judge Judy, on the other hand, continued to command respect with the same unwavering demeanor that had made her a household name. She had become, almost unintentionally, a symbol of integrity in an industry that often rewards the opposite. Her ability to maintain composure and authenticity through decades of fame made her a figure people trusted, even if they didn't always agree with her decisions. In the years that followed, the story of Ellen and Judge Judy became more than just celebrity gossip. It became a cultural reference point, a lesson about perception, power, and accountability. It revealed the danger of relying too heavily on image and the value of staying grounded in truth. It showed how quickly the tide of public opinion can change, and how those who build their identity on authenticity are better equipped to weather any storm. Ellen's downfall wasn't caused by one mistake, nor by one person's comment. It was the result of a slow unraveling, the kind that happens when the image you present to the world no longer aligns with the reality behind it. Judge Judy's remark had simply illuminated that gap. It was as if she had held up a mirror, forcing Ellen and the world to see what had been hidden in plain sight for years. In the end, both women walked away from the situation with their identities intact, but for very different reasons. Ellen learned the painful cost of maintaining an illusion, while Judy was affirmed in her belief that honesty, even when uncomfortable, is the most powerful form of respect. Their paths, though very different, intersected at a moment that revealed something timeless about human nature, that people may be entertained by charm, but they are moved by truth. Ellen's story remains a reminder of how fragile celebrity can be. It shows that audiences today crave sincerity more than ever before. The days of polished perfection are fading, replaced by a demand for transparency and accountability. Meanwhile, Judge Judy continues to represent the kind of strength that comes from self-awareness. She has never claimed to be perfect, but she has always been real, and that is what makes her enduring. Even now, years later, when people revisit Ellen's mean comment about Judge Judy, it reads almost like poetic irony. The woman Ellen once joked about turned out to be the embodiment of the values Ellen had been accused of lacking. It wasn't cruelty that made Judy powerful, it was clarity. She didn't confuse honesty with harshness, nor did she equate kindness with always being pleasant. To her, kindness was rooted in respect, accountability, and fairness, principles that remain constant whether or not anyone is watching. For Ellen, that realization came at a cost, but perhaps also with a kind of redemption. In acknowledging her mistakes, she began to understand the difference between being liked and being good. And while she may never fully reclaim her former image, her story continues to remind others, celebrities and viewers alike, that kindness is not a performance, but a practice. In the years that followed, the conversation about Ellen DeGeneres and Judge Judy Sheindlin evolved into something larger than a single moment of celebrity drama. Their story became a mirror through which audiences examined the broader culture of entertainment, fame, and authenticity. People began to question why they had been so quick to equate charm with goodness and bluntness with cruelty. What had once seemed like opposite qualities, Ellen's kindness and Judy's sternness, now looked like two very different expressions of power. Ellen's legacy became complex. She was still remembered for the groundbreaking parts of her career, her courage in coming out publicly when it could have destroyed her career, her contributions to comedy, and her years of philanthropy and generosity. Those achievements could not simply be erased. But the shadow of her show's controversy lingered, a reminder that even the most well-intentioned people are capable of blind spots. She had spent decades encouraging others to be kind, yet it took losing almost everything for her to truly understand what kindness requires: consistency, awareness, and humility. After stepping away from her show, Ellen focused on a quieter life. She invested more of her time in nature, animals, and personal growth. The public, though divided, began to soften toward her again. Over time, the noise of the scandal faded, leaving room for a more nuanced view of who she was, not the flawless icon she had once tried to be, but a human being who had made mistakes and faced their consequences. Her later interviews carried a tone of reflection rather than defense. She admitted that the experience had changed her deeply, that it had forced her to confront uncomfortable truths about leadership and responsibility. Judge Judy, meanwhile, continued to stand as an example of self-assured authenticity. She moved on to her new show, Judy Justice, with the same confidence that had defined her entire career. Her audience remained loyal because they trusted her to tell the truth, even when it wasn't easy to hear. She represented something rare in an industry obsessed with appearances, someone who didn't need approval to feel secure. Judy often said that she never worried about being liked, only about being respected, and that distinction became even more meaningful in the wake of Ellen's downfall. Over time, the public began to appreciate the irony of how things had unfolded. The woman who had been called mean for her directness was now seen as the model of integrity, while the woman who had built her brand on kindness had struggled to prove that she truly embodied it. But beyond that irony was a deeper lesson, one about the nature of truth. Judge Judy had never pretended to be perfect, and that honesty shielded her from scandal. Ellen, on the other hand, had tried to live up to an impossible image of perpetual goodness, one that no real person could sustain. The entertainment world took notice. Producers, writers, and hosts began paying more attention to the environment behind the camera. There was a growing awareness that the way a show's staff is treated is just as important as what audiences see on screen. Conversations about workplace culture, power dynamics, and accountability began happening more openly. In a way, Ellen's experience sparked a necessary shift in the industry, one that made space for more honesty, transparency, and self-reflection. Ellen's fans, though disappointed, never fully abandoned her. Many recognized that she had made genuine efforts to make amends. Some even argued that her public downfall served a purpose; it humanized her. For so long, she had been seen as untouchable, a symbol of relentless optimism. But the truth is that no one can be that perfect all the time. When she fell from that pedestal, she became relatable in a new way. The world saw that even those who preach kindness must continue learning what it means in practice. Judge Judy remained, as always, unchanged by the noise of public opinion. She had weathered decades in the spotlight with her signature mix of humor, intelligence, and authority. Her straightforward nature, once criticized as harsh, was now celebrated as a form of moral clarity. She didn't believe in sugarcoating or pretending to be what she wasn't, and in an age of polished facades, that kind of honesty felt refreshing. She proved that one could be respected without being sweet, and that being honest, even when it's uncomfortable, is its own form of kindness. In many ways, the contrast between Ellen and Judy became symbolic of a larger cultural shift. For years, audiences had been drawn to polished perfection, the celebrities who smiled flawlessly, spoke softly, and radiated positivity. But over time, people began craving something real. They wanted figures who were authentic, not idealized. They wanted to see flaws, growth, and humanity. Judge Judy had always offered that kind of authenticity. Ellen, through her struggle, eventually found it too, though the journey had cost her dearly. Years after the controversy, when people revisited the moment Ellen had jokingly called Judge Judy mean, it no longer seemed funny or petty. It felt like a turning point, a small comment that, in hindsight, captured the tension between perception and reality. It became a lesson about how quick people are to label others without understanding their strength or their truth. Ellen's joke had once been a harmless tease, but in time it came to represent something much bigger, the way we often misinterpret honesty as cruelty and confuse performance with kindness. Ellen's departure from television left a noticeable void in daytime programming. For nearly 2 decades, her show had been a cultural touchstone, a place where laughter, celebrity interviews, and surprise giveaways came together to create moments of joy. Despite everything that happened, that legacy of joy remained part of her story. People still remembered the episodes that made them laugh and cry, the moments of generosity that touched lives. Those memories didn't vanish, they simply existed alongside the newer, more complicated truths about the person behind them. Judge Judy continued to serve as a symbol of resilience and consistency. She had seen the rise and fall of many public figures, yet her own reputation remained untarnished. Her strength came from her refusal to play the game of celebrity. She didn't rely on public affection to validate her worth. She relied on her work, her values, and her unshakable confidence in her own principles. For her, authenticity wasn't a strategy, it was a way of life. The lasting impact of their intertwined stories lies in the lessons they left behind. From Ellen's experience came a reminder that no one can live behind a mask forever. From Judy's example came the reassurance that honesty, though sometimes uncomfortable, is what endures. Together, their stories illustrated the difference between being liked and being respected, between being seen as kind and actually being kind. In the end, both women contributed something valuable to the cultural conversation. Ellen reminded the world that kindness must be lived, not just performed. Judge Judy reminded everyone that truth, even when it cuts deep, is the foundation of real respect. Their paths, though different, converged in one essential truth: authenticity matters more than image. Years later, When people talk about that famous exchange, Ellen calling Judge Judy mean, and Judy subtly reminding her to pay attention to her own staff, it's no longer about gossip or rivalry. It's about growth, reflection, and the way truth always finds its way to the surface. Ellen's story became a testament to the human capacity for change, while Judy's became a testament to the power of steadfast honesty. And so, what began as a fleeting joke on television evolved into a lasting parable about kindness, perception, and integrity. It revealed that being mean isn't always about harsh words, sometimes it's about being firm enough to tell the truth. And being kind isn't always about smiling, it's about treating others with genuine respect, even when no one is watching. In the end, the woman who called another mean learned the hard way that true kindness isn't about what the world sees, it's about what you do when the cameras stop rolling. And the woman who was labeled as mean all along proved that sometimes, honesty is the kindest thing of all.